It's Ryan Metzler here, once again coming back to you from yet another little hiatus to bring you some review on a game that I was really excited about, managed to get my hands on a copy of, and got through the whole campaign very quickly, and that game is Charterstone from Stonemaier Games, designed by Jamie Stegmaier. This is a legacy Eurogame for anywhere from 1 to 6 players. Now, I won't be covering the one-player aspect because I don't solo games. I will also not cover the automata part of the game, so the kind of automated player that you can include, because we had a 5-player campaign where we just didn't see it necessary. But what I will be covering is kind of the general gameplay. That will come in the very first part of this video following the introduction, where there are no spoilers in that part, I believe. Take that with a grain of salt because I didn't go back and check to make sure there were no spoilers. But I don't think I really ruin anything gameplay-wise in that first part. At the end of that, there will be a warning that says, hey, stop watching now because there are going to be quite a few spoilers. And then I will go into a much more detailed explanation of the various parts of the game that change and are added as things go on. In the summary of this, you're also going to have spoilers. I'm going to talk about the overall experience of the game. If you don't want to hear that, you should probably just not watch this whole video, to be honest with you. If you don't want a review of what the game is like, don't watch, because I'm going to reveal quite a bit. So if you are more interested or you want kind of generalized information, check out that first part. But real quick, we'll open this up, we'll take a look at the base components. I will then go into much more detail, and then I'll come back at the end and give you my overarching feelings on how the game goes. So that's that. Well, here you have Charterstone. Now, this is the side of the board that I did not play on. So the board is two-sided. One side has all of my campaign stuff on it, so I don't want to show that to those of you who don't want spoilers. This is the game as it comes out of the box. So what you're looking at here is a main game board with 6 different charter areas for the players. It's a little hard to see, but there's little, I guess they're hexagonal or octagonal, 1, 2, 3, they're hexagonal spaces on these boards where you're going to be able to put out new buildings. Now, each player is going to start the game with 2 workers. The base mechanism of this game is either place worker or take all of your workers off of the board, and when you place a worker, you do something. Each player will also start the game with 12 of these influence tokens. These tokens will be placed out on the board or used in various ways to do things. Now, also out here you see a score marker for the player. You see some tracks here, so we have a progress track that will move when certain actions are taken. You have a reputation track that you can place some of your influence on to score points at the end of the game. And you have the quota track over here where you can sell off some of your resources for victory points. Additionally, in the middle of the board here, there are 5 buildings, starting buildings, to which you will add throughout the game. And these 5 buildings will let you take various actions. We'll come back to those in a moment. With this, the other base things you're going to start with in the game is you will start with some objective cards. I'm not going to show you any of these because these have additional ones mixed in. And you're going to start with advancement cards. There's a lot of these that I've added in, so I'm definitely not going to open this deck right now. As well as the index, this whole box, it's a little magnetically sealed box, will be filled with cards. So there's going to be a ton of cards in here. They may be storyline cards, they may be new rules, they may be additional things for over here. So there's a lot of stuff in here that will unlock as you progress through the games. Finally, you can see we have some very nice metal coins. We have the Charterstone die. We have different resources, so there's wheat, pumpkins, metal, we have ore, wood, and bricks, and then marker tokens for various areas on the board. Now, as I said, the main mechanism of the game is either place a worker or pull all of your workers off. So on your turn, you're either going to put one on, or your whole turn will be to pull off of the board. And there are 5 buildings at the start of the game, and you may add to your own charters throughout the game, where other buildings will be placed and other people can use them throughout the game to do things. So the 5 main buildings, however, are going to be the Zeppelin. The Zeppelin has a cost listed on the left-hand side here of 3 of your tokens, so you spend these out of the game, as well as 4 resources, which will be dictated by the building that you're going to build in order to build a new building, and that's what this little icon here means. It will score you 5 points, and you will place that building out somewhere in your charter in order to be used for you or other players throughout the game. The Charterstone here follows up on building actions. So some buildings have a little Charterstone icon also on the building. And that Charterstone icon is going to let you unlock more stuff from this index for the game. Could be from there, could be from some other boxes that are included. But you spend 2 of your influence and 4 money, coins, in order to open a Charterstone, this little box right here, and get 5 victory points. As I said, that Charterstone may add new rules, more buildings, more objectives, more different types of advancement cards. There's a whole variety of things that could be unlocked from this. So just note that that will happen. And this is the main way of changing what the game will do for you throughout the whole campaign. The grandstand here is going to let you accomplish an objective card. So these cards over here, without showing them to you, can relate to various different aspects of the game. It may be, for example, to have tokens over on this quota board, or to have tokens on this reputation board, a certain number of them, or accomplish some other aspect of the game in order to accomplish it and get those 5 victory points. So essentially, when you do this, you place the influence token you're using out onto the card and score your points. And you can do that for each objective once per game. The treasury here is pretty basic. You spend a resource and you get a money. And the market says spend a money and a resource in order to buy one of these advancement cards. So this is how you're going to upgrade the various things that you have. So throughout the game, you're going to be taking these actions and whatever ones happen to be available by placing your workers in order to score victory points. Now, there's a couple different ways to score points in the game. The main ones are going to be over here, at least that you can see right now over here, the cloud port, which is another building you can place on. The cloud port is going to let you get rid of some of your resources. For example, you can spend your actual resources, any of these tokens or money or cards that you've accomplished in order to get victory points. Always at a base of 3, but if you get rid of 2 of something, you can get extra victory points. 3 of something will get you extra victory points. Or 3 of something can get you tokens over on this reputation track. This reputation track at the end of the game is going to give points to whoever has the most tokens on it. 10 for first, 7 for second, and 4 for third, with ties actually just being awarded to both players. Now, you'll see this progress track here as well, and this little token I've placed on the 6-player spot is going to kind of dictate the length of the game. Certain actions, such as the Zeppelin, the Charterstone, and the Grandstand, as well as others that you may build, will advance this token when you take those actions. Advancing the token can cause, for example, you to place a token on the reputation track, or can cause things like income, which we haven't talked about yet because none of the cards actually grant income. But there is income you can earn, not really a surprise. But this will advance a certain number of times until you get to this last spot here, at which point you finish out the round, and whoever has the most points will win that game. Now, winning that game is, of course, getting the most points on this track, but it's not as simple as that, because each player has their own little charter box here. And this charter box is going to do several things for you. One, it holds all of your components, so all of the components that you get in the first game, as well as everything that transfers between games. Additionally, when you finish the game, there may be several things to accomplish. One, occasionally there's going to be a card here on this guidepost that will have some type of dictation as to what the goal of the game is to win this card. Winning this card will give you a star, and stars will be end campaign points for winning the overall campaign. Additionally, you'll see every 10 points you get awards you 1 star. So you'll be able to fill those stars out on here. And you just fill out these tracks as you see fit. These tracks will let you gain additional things at the beginning of future games. So just know that that's something that you can do. It's not really a surprise, so I don't think I'm spoiling anything there. What else? So then this track will award you points, and you're going to mark on this box every star you get, as well as victories that you get at the bottom here. And these will be kind of calculated into your end campaign scoring to see who wins the overall game. Additionally, you'll see there's a spot here for something called capacity. This is the amount of resources after the second game that you can carry over from game to game. So it's going to tell you can carry over a resource and a money and a card and some other stuff. Let's not look at it in too much detail. That's going to be what you can carry over. But essentially, that's the basics of the game. You're going to place workers, pull them off, do the actions, score victory points, get stars, and mark down victories in order to see who carries the most points over at the end of the whole campaign. From there, I'm going to flip this over and show you the other side of my completed board. If you do not want any spoilers, stop watching this video right now. Again, if you don't want any spoilers, stop watching now. Okay, so here you can see the other side of the board. This is our completed campaign board. We played a 5-player campaign all the way through all 12 games, so we're done. And I just kind of want to cover some of the stuff that can come out or the changes that can be made to the game, so you can see somewhat how this progresses, and I'll talk in my summary about that progression in more detail. So what you're seeing here, obviously, we have the 5 starting buildings and the cloud port over here, but you can see there are 6 buildings available in every area on this board. Now, as I said earlier, everybody starts with their 2 workers, and those workers can be placed in any of these buildings, at least throughout most of the game. Now, the guidepost may change certain rules from game to game, and those guideposts, there'll be one each game, that may dictate that you want to have the most of something in order to score an extra star, or that you may want to have the most tokens over on this quota track, or the least of something at the end of the game in order to score this card. Now, these cards, I can't really show them to you because they're scratched off now, but not only do they award you with an extra star for your endgame campaign, but they also give you a scratch-off area where you can make a choice that dictates how the game will progress often. So the player that does this objective the best will get to make that choice. Now, in addition to these 2 workers that you have that you're placing and removing, you can also get minions, and that's what this is over here. So you'll see we have cats and robots and butlers and ghosts and golems and chefs, and there are various buildings that may or may not be out on the board at any given time that will let you pick these up and use them. For all intents and purposes, these are workers that you place on your turn, but each one of them has a benefit. So the cat gives you a victory point when you place it, or when somebody else places on the area you're on. So, for example, if I place it on one of my buildings, and it must be placed in my own charter, for the purpose of this, I was actually over in this area over here. So this was my charter. So anytime I have a cat, I have to place it on a building in my charter. But if somebody comes over and places on the same building as my cat, I get that reward again, an extra victory point. So these are minions that can only be placed in your area, but they can coexist with other workers in the game in order to give you some type of benefit. I won't go over what all of those do, but know that they give you things for doing stuff with them. Additionally, you can have a persona each game. So there are these cards that you'll unlock throughout the game. And the more of these that you use in your game, the more points you'll score in the endgame campaign. So it rewards you for having different abilities every game. This one, for example, says whenever you place or whenever you retrieve your workers, you get 2 victory points if you retrieve at least 2 robots. So this is going to be focused on having robots that you can place and bringing them back at least 2 at a time. There are tons of those. This entire deck is personas. And when you finish the campaign, the game continues on where you get to draft those personas at the start of the next game. Additionally, you'll see that there are these sky tiles over here that we also have buildings built on. At the start of the game, the players can choose some of these sky tiles to go in their charter to cover up other buildings that are there. All buildings that you've built will be worth points at the end of the game with a little number on the bottom here. So this one's worth 20 points. And having built more buildings obviously will be worth more points, which will potentially win you the campaign. You'll also see that there are these little tokens right here. These are called Peril. Peril goes out on all of the built buildings at the start of the game, 1 token per building, and there are various objectives in buildings that reward you for having and paying these Peril tokens throughout the game. So it may help you choose where to place your different workers. This ghost I'm going to talk about in the summary because it's interesting, but I'm not going to talk about it now. Over here, I just wanted to show off a couple of examples of what these objective and advancement cards look like. So, for example, this one here is an objective that says have your influence tokens on at least 3 income buildings. So you need to find buildings that provide income. For example, this one here provides an income of a minion. Or these ones, there might be another one over here somewhere. I'm not seeing any right now, but if you have them on 3 of these buildings, you can go to the grandstand and score your 5 victory points by putting one of your influence tokens here. This is have at least 1 of each resource. This is have at least 4 different advancement card types. Now, advancement card types, there are several. I mentioned earlier there are more buildings. So there's a building here that you can get by accomplishing, maybe going to the market and picking an advancement card. Or there are things like items that you can build in order to score victory points on your turn by discarding certain goods. There are friends that are going to give you a benefit for going to particular charters. So this is a friend of the gray charter. You can see it in the top right corner. And anytime you go to the gray charter and use a building in that charter to gain victory points, this person's going to give you an extra victory point. there are going to be assistants, and assistants give you some type of benefit throughout the game for doing something in particular. And then you have treasures, and treasures may do various effects. Like this one says you can discard it at the end of your turn to retrieve your worker that you just placed and play another turn. So there are all types of things in here that are going to let you change how this game plays, change the board, change certain objectives or ways that you interact with things out here that are going to change how you play the game. Now, as I said, throughout the game, you're going to fill out your charter box here, and you're going to fill in these stars, and these stars will let you get various things at the start of the game. So this player was able to get an extra resource, an extra money, 3 points at the start of the game, a reputation token over here to hopefully get some points, 1 capacity, which is more stuff they can carry over from game to game, and they were almost able to start with an extra persona. Additionally, each one of these stars is worth 10 points towards the overall campaign. On the other side, you have your capacity, so you can see they could carry over 4 resources, 4 money, 4 different types of cards, and 4 different types of minions from game to game, and they won 3 games throughout the campaign. Now, there are also things throughout the game that are going to change how many points you score for various things at the end, but overall, that's the kind of components that you're going to get within Charterstone. That's the various aspects of the game, but at the core, the game is place workers or pull all of your workers off and score victory points. Well, there you have it. That is Charterstone. I've been trying to gather my thoughts on how to discuss all of this at the end. I guess I'll try and discuss it in more generalized terms, but this is going to be very spoily terminology that's used throughout the whole summary. Overall, really loved this experience. We played through all 12 games in a month or so, and that's with several weeks of travel either to different states or international travel where I was unable to play. So every session we sat down to play this game, we played a minimum of 3 times each time. And that's really one of the strengths of this game, is that the entire game, even in the longer kind of middle of the campaign games, maybe an hour, hour and 15 minutes for the whole game. Now, the very beginning games, game 1, game 2, far too light for my tastes. I mean, it's literally place a worker, pull your workers off 3 times around, and every third turn you're not really doing anything because your whole turn is to pull guys off of the board. But very rapidly at the beginning, that Charterstone aspect where you unlock more things, whatever those things may be. We showed some minions off, we showed additional types of cards, we showed more buildings that will be built onto the board. That Charterstoning very quickly changes the overall gameplay in those early games, with some minions coming out potentially, or new types of cards, or new types of buildings, or income, or different ways to handle things throughout the board that are going to change the rules, although very slightly, just kind of additional rules, but also the pace of the game. With that said, the early Charterstoning, which happens quite frequently, and you're unlocking all of these things over and over and over again, really kind of messes with the tempo of the game to me, kind of early on in that campaign games. Particularly 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5. There's just so much Charterstoning that on everybody's turn you're referencing something, opening something up, reading new rules, putting things into the rule book, stickering things, putting out new components. That the tempo of the game there can tend to slog a little bit, where people are almost hoping that you don't Charterstone on your turn and open up more stuff. We had that happen several times, where we just thought things were slowing down too much, but in reality you're still talking, an hour, hour and 15 minute game, so not slowed down that much, at least not for our group. The variability in this game and the order in which things will unlock, because players will not unlock things in the same order. So my experience would be very different from yours, which may be very different from my own experience if I were to play it a next time. The variability is huge. The game really rewards you for making choices that differ things for you from game to game. Be it choosing a different persona every game. You're allowed to reuse your personas, which give you special abilities, but using different ones will give you end of campaign points. You are allowed to focus simply on getting the most points each game, but doing what the guidepost tells you to do may award you end of campaign points, whereas you may not get an additional 10 points giving you 1 end of campaign star for points by just focusing on winning the game. But winning the game, of course, gives you end campaign points as well. So you have a choice to balance in one way or the other. you can focus on getting items and completing those for points, or you can focus on going to the cloud port and getting points through the quota track, or through putting things on reputation. But the game kind of lends you a focus each game with those guideposts on with the storyline that's occurring throughout the game. Really what I want to say here is that the focus isn't necessarily in each game on winning. The focus is on positioning yourself for the end of campaign if you're playing, to win overall. So it may be that you're not focusing on scoring a lot of in-game points, but you're building a lot of buildings. And those buildings can be worth, 20, 25 points at the end of the campaign. So that's something to pay attention to. We even had, and this is very spoiler, one player who died in the campaign, and he came back as a ghost. And that ghost was unable to win the campaign, but he got additional abilities for his main meeple as he placed it out on the board, which helped him score points throughout the game and helped him score end campaign points. And he had a way to resolve this so that he could win the game at the end if he accomplished something. So overall, I'd just say that the game progresses quite a bit, but the progression is very, very light at the beginning, very heavy on adding new things in games 2 through 5, with a little bit of stagnation towards the middle, games 6, 7, 8, where maybe you're opening Charterstones, but things aren't necessarily changing in how you play the game that much. Games 11 and 12 are very heavily focused on a couple new things, so a lot of stuff unlocks at a certain point if you haven't already done it. And so you see some major shifts towards the end there, but the point is to really ramp up in the end there, and it gives you some focus on how to progress things forward. Overall, I was really kind of impressed with how it went through. Again, I didn't play the Automata. I have not played the end of game scenario that you get where you can simply continue playing this game without the legacy aspect of it. But I think our entire group really enjoyed it. We had a 5-player campaign with the same 5 players all the way through, and everybody seemed to have a blast with it. So overall, if that sounds good to you, hopefully I didn't ruin too much, or if you weren't planning on buying it anyway, I still think your experience will vary from mine if you do want to go and get it now. But that's Charterstone. Really worth it, I think. Definitely go check it out.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.